Well, I told you all it was happening. We covered the Mox Masters Invitational last week, and now we're talking about the Mox Masters Open. For those who are sitting there wondering, Ian, what does that even mean? The Mox Masters Open was the open cEDH tournament that was not invite only, that happened on the same premises, in the same room as the Mox Masters Invitational. So for the folks who didn't have the chance to participate in all the online tournaments this year round, who were maybe more local to the area, or who were just, not able to do the online space, or maybe don't even like playing the online tournaments, they were able to show up and play in this tournament. So we have our Mox Masters Open here. We're going to be breaking down the top 16 decks from this cEDH tournament. A lot of cool stuff that is showing up here. But before I break it down, remember to hit that like button, that subscribe button, helps out the channel a ton, and we'll be talking about cEDH coaching later in this episode. Also, while we're here, Dragonshield's got a new thing going on with a whole new site and a great new way to go get some sleeves. So if you want to use the sleeves that I've been using for literally my entire time playing Magic, there is a link down below, and if you use promo code comedian, you can get some money off those sleeves. Pretty sick. I would love to get sleeves at a reduced rate. That's pretty cool. Our first deck of this top 16 is Najeela by Strout. Okay. We have a Najeela list here today. It's pretty classic Najeela turbo stuff. 29 lands, which is a little higher for a Najeela list nowadays. We got the intuition lines, you being able to do your Underworld Breach combos, very few artifacts, not running a bunch of talismans, things like that. I feel like a number of the Najeela lists I'm seeing are moving more towards this, where they're not running like an insane amount of fast mana, but like sort of a hybridized mana base. So they've got some dorks, some fast mana, mostly the mana positive stuff, but they're not going into talismans and stuff like that, but also running like spirit guides and things like, sometimes Rite of Flame, this version not running that, but definitely interesting to see. I like the idea that they're not playing as many like dead draws in Najeela, because Najeela is a deck that truly lacks card advantage in most ways that are relevant. So, you definitely have cards like Samet to help you in that scenario, but definitely it's nice to see them not playing as many questionable cards for sure. You have your one card win cons here with Grim Hireling, Derevi, all that stuff. You got your Thoracle Dockside stuff. You have your Thoracle Consult stuff. You have your classic one card win cons, then you can do breach things, you can do ad nauseam stuff. Najeela, very powerful archetype. We all kind of know how it works at this point. It's very solid. One of the spicy cards in this version that I know people were talking about a very long time ago is Runaway Together, but its wording is really interesting for multiplayer because it says can choose 2 target creatures controlled by different players, return this creature's to the owner's hand. So you can do things like bounce your opponent's creature that they're trying to win with and then bounce your own dockside. Or you can be like, hey, my Najeela needs to get in, bounce one thing you have, bounce one thing you have, Kraken for my warriors. So definitely a lot of interesting stuff there with this commander, but classic Najeela aggressively slanted deck. It's doing its thing in this format and pretty consistently doing so. Okay, this is really cool for me personally. This is Ouija plus Lua Pupper plus Human, duplicated from Lua Stardust by Lua Stardust. Yeah, this is my girlfriend who made top 16, and I'm really freaking excited to see. Lua has been doing better and better with this Pako and Haldan list, bringing it to multiple tournaments and just getting better results in every single tournament, and now making the top 16 of this tournament, which is really, really cool. We play together a lot. I see this list a lot, and we tinker with and work on the slots for this list a lot. So definitely a lot to talk about here. Pako and Haldan was, made by Braden, my old host of the cEDH cast. I sort of took on the primer for it after I played it in the MLC. And then I kind of put it down for a while until Lewis started playing it, and now I see this list all the time. So it's pretty sick. So the idea is you have Haldan and Pako. The big difference between the way Lua and I play this deck is that Lua does not play Underworld Breach as a hard breach win, right? So there's no Lion's Eye Diamond here, there's no Brain Freeze. Breach is actually here as a value Underworld Breach. This list in this version of the deck is actually, the only hard combo is the old Seasons Past combo. For those who don't know, basically you get Seasons Past plus a top deck tutor, so something like Personal Tutor or Mystical Tutor, something like that. And then one of these Time Warp effects, and you need 12 mana, but with Pako and Haldan, it's actually really not that hard to do. And you basically are able to use Seasons Past to pick up all the things in your graveyard, which usually include a tutor and a Time Warp effect. You cast a Time Warp, take an extra turn. Seasons Pass, part of the resolution of the spell is that it goes on the bottom of your library. So then you use the top deck tutor, put it back on top of your library, etc., and take infinite turns. The other way that you win with this deck, and that Lua has done probably some of the best work I've ever seen with this archetype, is just actually murdering people with Pako. So cards like Chandra's Ignition, which are just normally just associated with casual commander, but it's really good in this deck because Pako will get to a point where it has 13, 15, 18 power very, very easily. It is so easy to take 2 or 3 turns of just not even taking turns, like extra turns, just like playing the game out, and then just having a big Pako and being like, okay, cool, I'm gonna deal 15 to every creature on the board except for Pako, and then everybody's face as well, and then I'll swing in and hit you for like the last 18 damage, kill one player, and then usually you win by like either taking another turn or something like that. So Pako's very good at like chipping away at opponents until it just straight up kills them. It's a tough deck because it's very mid-rangey, very control-y, and if your opponents are like over aggressively removing Pako and Haldan, it's definitely something that can like cause you guys to lose the game, because a lot of people tend to get afraid of like, oh, big dog scary. But the way to actually play the deck well, and that Lou has gotten very good at, is that you actually want to spread out damage as much as possible so that you can continue to gain card advantage, right? Because when you remove players from the game, you lose all of the cards that you've taken from their decks, right? So it's actually better to keep people alive as long as possible. But once again, having cards like Chandra's Ignition, Shadow Spear, and sometimes even Rancor, although it didn't make the final cut for this one, to be able to just turn the corner with these spells is really sick. A piece that we found together very recently that I was very proud of discovering in my bulk was the Lost and the Damned, which is whenever a land enters the battlefield from anywhere other than your hand, or you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, i.e. anytime you play a land with Haldan or Pako, anytime you cast a spell with Haldan or Pako, you make a 3/3. And when you're like making multiple land drops per turn and casting very cheap spells out of there, suddenly you look at a board of like 15 creatures, the 15 3/3s, and that gets out of hand really fast, on top of the fact that you have a Pako that's like 20 power a lot of the time. Yeah, this list is doing a bunch of different stuff. It is gaining a bunch of advantage, and it is generating a bunch of card advantage. Minsk and Boo and Teferi, really good value planeswalkers that are probably pretty underplayed in the format in general right now. But yeah, this is just super cool to be able to see this top cut by Lua, and pretty excited that that this happened. It's really cool to see all of their hard work paid off, and it's pretty sick. So yeah, really cool. And also, Pako and Haldan hasn't made a top cut in a really long time, so that part's pretty sick too. We have Fake Gold, cEDH by Zarek. We got Krom and Tevesh. You know, I was talking about last week with the breakdown of Mox Masters Invitational about how, you know, you really only see Sharky playing that deck, but here we have 2 players, which we'll talk about the other one later, on this Tevesh Krom list. We've got Displacer Kitten lines here, very solid with Tevesh. Basically every other flicker is drawing you cards, or 2 out of your 3 flickers draws you 2 cards, which is pretty cool. You have the Hullbreaker Horror lines to be able to bounce Tevesh infinitely, and then you get to play Grixis good stuff. You got your Thoracle stuff, you got your Dockside stuff. Sometimes people loop Dockside with this archetype, but it does not seem like a lot of the players currently are doing that. And then you have the classic Turbo Nas stuff, you know, being able to grab breaches and all of those things. You get to also break parity on cards like Curse Totem pretty effectively, because you're not really playing creatures with activated abilities. But yeah, Krom Tevesh, very proactive, very strong archetype, and definitely one that is quite comparable to Blue Farm. Just attacking on a little bit of a different axis, having a few more synergy cards like Hullbreaker and Displacer Kitten and things like that. Very interesting to see Notion Thief. I think Notion Thief is starting to pick back up. I think people are realizing, you know, your opponents don't always have a Bowmasters, and when they don't have a Bowmasters, Notion Thief is still really, really good, especially in a format with a lot of Kroms running around. So when a lot of people are still trying to draw a bunch of cards, Notion Thief still can dominate games until the Bowmasters come down. We have Shades Venoms with Donald Trump Politics, You Vote, I Win. This is a pretty classic Tivit list here. This one's still playing cards like Urza, definitely a few more 4-drops than we're used to. Lavinia, definitely a slower bear that is not always played in Tivit for sure. You know, doing a lot of the classic Tivit stuff. Tivit being, you know, your classic controlling deck here in the format. You know, it struggled a little bit when I played it in the Invitational, but it's still a very solid deck, and if people aren't overreacting to Tivit, you still can do really well with it. I mean, and even if you don't get your Tivit game plan online, you still have Esper Colors, which has just a lot of really broken cards in it. You know, you got cards like Bowmasters, Kitten, Ranger Captain, Opposition Agent, Italian, and the list goes on and on and on. You have your Thoracle lines, you have your 1-card win common time sieve. Tivit is still good and still able to win games for sure. We have Kicking It with Kinnan by Moserkill. Now, I think I made a mistake in last week's episode in saying that one of the players in the Invitational had directly copied what Freedom Waffle was doing with their list, and I think this might have actually been the list that did that. But this is Kinnan, classic explosive Kinnan. Oh no, this can't be, because I don't think Freedom Waffle plays Sylvan Library. Someone in one of these tournaments played Kinnan and had an exact copy of Freedom Waffle's list, but I don't think it's this one. We have another 25 land Kinnan list. These Kinnan pilots are getting so greedy. I'm still on 27, but this one also on double Agatha's Cauldron and Mirage Mirror as ways to effectively go off make infinite colorless and convert that. We have Machine God's Effigy in this one, which combos with Devoted Druid to make infinite blue and green mana, which is really interesting because that is not always played in this archetype specifically, but it's just another combo that works and allows you to make infinite mana for Kinnan. So definitely a lot of cool, interesting stuff with this version. Very light on lands, but you know, sometimes that's how Kinnan lists are going to get there. This is a very proactive Kinnan deck, and congrats to our player for making the top 16. We have Thrashing Zot by Mystic Raider. We talked about Tevesh earlier, but this is the Thrasios Tevesh list, a Sultai deck in the Year of Our Lord 2023. Very unlikely, but here we are. No, I mean, Sultai has been really getting dunked on, but here we have a Sultai list doing well, for sure. We have Displacer Kitten lines here with Dreamstalker, our deck being able to pick up in the same way that like Teferi can combo off with Displacer Kitten. You know, I definitely like the Teferi version a little bit better, just because Teferi is able to actually silence your opponents while also doing this type of thing. But Activated Sleeper here is a really spicy include, being able to, you know, just have it as a creature card in a graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. So anything that dies, this can come a copy of it. Interestingly, you can like kill a Dockside and have this come in as that. I'm interested to hear the idea behind Activated Sleeper in this list specifically. We have Kinnan here, and I'm assuming there's going to be a Basalt Monolith. Oh, there's none down the archetype. So this is just a grindy Kinnan for sure, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, this is like Sultai good stuff. I see Saw and a Half here, so I'm wondering if there's some sort of something here. I feel like with Activated Sleeper and Saw and Half, it's making me feel like there's some combo that I'm missing in this deck, or there's just some weird spicy cards in here, which is also possibly an option. But yeah, pretty sick inclusions in this Thrasios Tevesh list. Definitely curious if you're the pilot of this deck. Some of these inclusions, pretty wild. We got Trick Bind here too, Obscuring Haze. Definitely some cards that are not traditionally played in cEDH for sure. Kael Observes the Truth, duplicated from Playing with Power Ryan by Playing with Power Kael. This is Kael, formerly Playing with Power, and now a Najeela player. I know Kael has like moved pretty hard off of Team Malcolm, which was their main deck for a very long time, but it's a deck that is really struggling in the current meta. I think he said he was like 1 for 10 as far as like doing well at events lately with that deck. So this is the pivot heading to the Truth Najeela variant, right? We got our Intuition lines, our Adnaz lines, the stuff that we talked about earlier in the episode. This version playing the Hireling stuff, playing Derevi, Samit, all of the pretty classic Najeela stuff, playing your Thoracle lines, have your Dockside for explosivity, and all of these really powerful sorceries here to just turn the corner on the game. This is a pretty classic Najeela stuff, and good to see Kael jumping on a new deck after the loss of Team Malcolm for sure. Winota, Mox Masters Lift by Mina the Gifted. We got a Winota in top 16, let's go! It's been a hot minute since we got a Winota doing anything in top results, but thank goodness we have Winota here. This is a very creature-heavy Winota list, the most I think I've ever actually seen. This is 56 creature Winota, playing a lot of the new cards that have not been able to get played in some of these new Winota lists. Very combo heavy version of Winota. This one's playing the Breath of Fury lines down to 28 lands, which is very aggressive. Using Eerie Interlude as like board wipe protection, having Tibble's Trickery for removal and counter spells. Yeah, this one, yeah, flipping into Aura Touch Mage as a combo. Playing Fury in the main deck, Thopter Engineer. Definitely like a lot of like, this feels like the most absolutely foot on the gas pedal version of Winota that I've seen in a really long time. You know, I've been doing a lot of work to try and update my version of the deck, and it's been like slowing down a good amount to try and respect the metagame. But this one is definitely just like full send Winota, which is pretty sick. Seeing a lot of cards here that are not traditionally played in the archetype, like Seeding Pyromancer, which is a card I've owned for a while and thought about for Winota and haven't actually played. War Singer, which is a card that some people were really into when it first came out. I was never really a big fan of, but a quick way to get your hate berries back out of the graveyard. Playing some of the less played normal humans like Palace Jailer and Thalia and Thopter Engineer, 3-mana Thalia to be specific. Lelia the Blade Reforged as card advantage in these colors. A lot of crazy stuff here from this Winota deck. Really happy to see Winota make a top 16. Gives me hope that maybe I can bring her back someday out of the abyss that has been the current metagame. But really cool to see Winota make a top 16. Obviously a list very close to my heart, a list I truly adore. And you know, I've been working on the archetype a lot, even though I haven't brought it to a tournament. It's been something I've been probably playing more than most other decks. It's basically like whatever I'm taking to the tournament that week, and Winota's the other deck I play. And I'm just, yeah, doing my best work to get her back and ready to go. But the format's been quite unkind to Winota, so it's really sick to see her in the top 16 here. J Pabs Thrasios and Dargo. Already seen Spice right up here in the first card with Oko, Thief of Crowns. Very, very popular with many people, very, very unpopular with others. We're seeing the classic Seedborn, Tidespout Tyrant, you know, Neoform, Eldritch Evolution, making your Tidespout Tyrant classic Dargo stuff. Got some of the lines here with Bergie and things like that. This list definitely going a little heavier into like the Dargo combos than some of the, you know, people like Freedom Waffle who traditionally play, or Manila Midget, who've kind of moved off cards like that. I'm seeing Goblin Bombardment also here. Just so this one's very, very Dargo combo heavy for sure. And that's definitely an interesting part about this deck. The explosive side of it definitely leaning into a little bit more than the grindy side. You have your greater good stuff. You have all these cards with Underworld Breach. Once again, it's so surprised to see that Altar of Dementia is not making it into these versions of the Thrasios Dargo deck, especially because it's basically you get the right amount of sacrifices so you can mill your opponents out, and then you can mill down to your breach, and that seems pretty good to me. So very surprised to see Altar of Dementia not played in a lot of these Thrasios Dargo lists, but it's a pretty solid mid-range deck and it's been doing really well lately. We have I guess Hathenate, Hathenate. I don't know. Brewing's hard, so I stole Waffle's list. This is Freedom's Waffle, Freedom Waffle's Blue Farm list that we covered in last week's episode of the show. Really not much to say. This is just a carbon copy of that list that made it to the top 16. So Hate the Nate, good job copying a pretty solid list and making it all the way to the top 16 with this Blue Farm deck. Big Brother by Zero Sleeps by Zero Sleeps. I guess they made a deck by making a deck. We have Inalla here. Classic Inalla combo stuff. This version having more of the pivot lines than a lot of the Inalla lists that have been doing well lately. So not like the Emery stuff that we've been seeing a lot more of, but you know, choosing to go with our 7 mana Scholar of Ages here, which is more of a, once again, a pivot line that has been not as traditionally played as some of the other ones. We also are back on the Ruthless Technomancer, Bloodline Necromancer combos, Techno combo, being able to win through Rule of Laws and stuff like that, and Rhystic Studies. So that part's pretty sick and definitely good in the current meta that is very Rhystic Study heavy. We have Aether Channeler here, which also allows you to do like Dockside combos, which is pretty cool because you get the scenario where what you'll do is you'll play Dockside, then you'll play Channeler, you'll make a copy with Inalla. The first copy will bounce Dockside, the second copy will bounce Channeler, and if it makes a certain amount of treasures, which I believe needs to be 7 treasures for this to work, because you need 3 for Channeler, 1 for the copy of Channeler, and then 2 to play Dockside, which makes 6, and then 1 to net the mana. So at 6, you can make infinite Aether Channeler copies, and at 7, you can make infinite mana on Aether Channeler copies, which is pretty cool, and definitely a pretty cool combo to have with Inalla. I'm actually really surprised that this is not more popular. It's a combo that I think is like really, really solid in Inalla, and I'm interested to hear a lot of the pilots and their opinions on not playing this combo, because it's like actually one of my favorite ways to play Inalla is to have that combo. I know a lot of lists have moved a lot more towards like a very lean package, which is good. I mean, you want a lean win package, but this would be one of the main reasons I would like to play Inalla, is to have pivot lines like this one. So very good job by Zero Sleeps. Before we get into top 4, remind everybody, we offer cEDH coaching here on the channel. If you're interested in coaching, you can head over to comedianmtg@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter or Discord. All those places are in the description down below to find out more about cEDH coaching. It has been really helpful for a lot of people, and it's something I'm really proud of. And I noticed a lot of people have been coaching have been ending up in these top results. So that's pretty cool as an instructor to be able to see a lot of people putting up good results after coaching sessions for sure. And there's also new slots open on the Patreon. So if you want to go through Patreon for coaching, that's totally fine. But a reminder, you can always come contact me directly or find me at patreon.com/comedianmtg to find out more about coaching and or just supporting the channel. Into the top 4, we have Ninjas Ahoy by John Kennedy with this Yuriko Ninja list. Yuriko's been doing better and better lately. These Yuriko lists are starting to put up results, and it's been pretty cool. Yuriko just absolutely able to play the most hateful Stax package in the entire world. You know, they can be on Thassa's Oracle as a win con and still be playing cards like Torpor Orb, Nashi, all of these ninjas that are super sick, and then have a bunch of these cards that are just like, hey, we can afford super expensive interaction, so we're gonna play super expensive interaction and then flip and use that as burn damage for Yuriko later, you know, or Bloodchief Ascension, which is, I don't think, a traditional Yuriko piece, but I actually really like it as an include there because that puts a real clock on the table that's not just based on you specifically going to combat, right? There is a very many ways for your opponents to lose 2 life on their turns, and then suddenly, oh, my thing's in the graveyard. Oops, I played 1 spell, and now it's all going in the graveyard, and suddenly Yuriko's draining you for a bunch of life. And I can easily see a 1 mana investment like this being a huge change to the scape of the game, especially because Yuriko is one of those decks where you just like, you want to invest in very small things, and you often will have like 8 or 9 cards at the end of your turn because of all of your flips with Yuriko. So I could easily see Bloodchief being actually really, really big for this deck, and I think it's a really smart inclusion that I'm pretty gassed about. Congrats on your top 4. We have Terrible Bad Deck, Don't Play by Willy Hilly. This is Krom Tevesh doing the Krom Tevesh stuff that we were talking about earlier in this episode. No Displacer Kitten, which is super crazy. That is like the one really, I mean, apart from Rograk in the 99, which I do not understand at all. I guess it's a 0 mana thing that you can sack to Tevesh, I guess, is the idea behind that. It's a little confusing in general, in my opinion. Malevolent Hurlant, one of my favorite Tevesh cards, because you just play it, you sack it, you draw 2 cards, and then you get to cast the Benevolent Gust part of it out of the graveyard. But this archetype is, as we've been talking about before, you know, you're doing the Adna stuff, you can occasionally do the infinite mana stuff, and you can do the Hullbreaker stuff. It's just a lot of Grixis good stuff combined with some outlets. Super crazy that there's no Displacer Kitten in this, because Tevesh, one of like the main arguments for Tevesh over Tymna is that it's a Displacer Kitten outlet. So it's kind of wild to see no kitten in this version. TK is the Way by Fatal Stephen 710. This is Tymna Krom. This is not directly copied from Freedom Waffle, but this is a pretty classic Tymna Krom list. Not using Talion, but instead choosing to go for the 1-ring route for this archetype. Doing a lot of the blue farm stuff. This pretty average blue farm thing going on here, using Born Upon a Wind, which has been some pretty sick blue farm tech. I like Soul Partition a lot in this archetype. Really good tempo piece, especially if you're trying to do certain things with this archetype where you're fighting off a more explosive version of the deck. It's nice to be able to have that speed. Hydroblast, interesting inclusion. It was really popular when Winota was really popular in the format, so it's still surprised to kind of see it play here. And Burnt Offering is not a card I'm used to in blue farm at all. I feel like we've had this conversation about Burnt Offering and blue farm once before, because this is giving me major deja vu. But yeah, congrats to our player here for blue farming it up in the top 4, and then 26 lands. My god, these greedy blue farm players. Unlimited Power, MMI, Mox Invitational 2K by Nevi. All this is the Open, not the Invitational. Anyways, Nevi is here. Very competent Najeela player, someone I played multiple times, and definitely respect his play. Just a good Najeela player, for sure. Playing a very powerful deck, right? We got the Inalla stuff, we got the Breach stuff, you know how it is. Soul Cauldron, really interesting inclusion here for Najeela, not one that I see a ton of, and I'm pretty interested to hear the thought behind it. Obviously, it is a situation where it can turn your Mana Crypts and your Soul Rings into, and Mana Vaults, I guess, too, into activations of Najeela, which fixes your mana pretty effectively for a deck that does kind of struggle to be able to make actual Wooburg nowadays. The Najeela decks are definitely far away from the days where you used to just be like, oh, my lands will always tap for those colors because I'm playing midrange. Like, definitely a very different deck from those days. So, but yeah, I mean, this is a player who is definitely someone you should be respecting on Najeela and who keeps doing well with Najeela. So congrats to Nevi. Big to take down this tournament, and congratulations. Well done. This concludes our Mox Masters Open 2023. Huge shout out to Lewis Stardust. You killed it for making this top 16, but also a huge shout out to the rest of the top 16, top 4, and winning players. It was a pretty cool open tournament, you know, as I said, side by side with our invitational, and pretty cool to see the decks that made it in this tournament, compare them to the invitational, and see all the different spice that is in this top 4. Najeela taking down the whole thing, but Yuriko in the top 4 is pretty cool. We have 2 copies of Krom Tevesh in the top 16. We have, you know, our Paco and Haldan. We have Najeela, and we have Najeela again. We have Winota making the top 16 after not being in there for quite some time. So a lot of cool stuff from this open. Remember, if you like videos like this, hit like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite deck from this breakdown was, and hope you all have an amazing week. I'll catch you next time. Peace.